Certain names in football history do not just represent talent, but embody an entire era, an entire identity, and an eternal flame of inspiration. Eusebio da Silva Ferreira, known simply as Eusebio or the Black Panther, belongs to that rare pantheon. His story is not just that of a footballer who dazzled stadiums and terrified defenders, but also of a boy who rose from the dust of Mozambique to become one of the greatest players the world has ever known. His life was one of speed, power, charisma, and unshakable will. A journey that continues to inspire long after his boots have been laid to rest. Eusebio was born on January 25, 1942, in Lourenço Marques, the city we know today as Maputo, Mozambique's capital. At that time, Mozambique was a Portuguese colony, and like most colonies, the life of the local African population was marked by hardship and inequality. Eusebio's family was poor. His father, Laurindo Antonio da Silva Ferreira, worked on the railways but passed away when Eusebio was still young, leaving his mother, Elisa, to raise the children largely on her own. The family had little to live on. Their home was modest, their surroundings tough, and yet, amid the struggles, football became young Eusebio's sanctuary. Please like, share, and comment on the video with your valuable feedback. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to get notified of new videos. Tell us in the comments if you would like to see the biography of your favorite football player. Lourenço Marques were his first training ground. There were no professional boots, no manicured fields, and often not even a proper ball. The children made their own, from socks or rags tied together, or even rolled up paper. Eusebio played barefoot, his feet hardened by the rough ground, his body toughened by the endless running in the African heat. From the beginning, he showed something different. He was faster than the other boys, strong even at a young age, and had an instinct for scoring goals. Neighbors began to talk about the boy with lightning speed, the boy who could strike a ball like it was a cannon. He soon joined Sporting Lourenço Marques, a youth club tied to Sporting Lisbon. But despite the connection to Sporting, fate would pull him in another direction. Scouts had already noticed his incredible talent. The most significant was the Brazilian legend José Carlos Bauer, who had played against Eusebio in Mozambique and immediately told Benfica officials in Lisbon that he had found a diamond. Rival clubs began circling, including Sporting Lisbon, but Benfica moved swiftly and decisively. What followed was one of the most dramatic recruitment stories in football history. Fearing that Sporting Lisbon might steal the young prodigy, Benfica arranged for Eusebio to leave Mozambique secretly in 1961. He traveled under disguise, with his identity kept hidden until operation, one that only added to the mystique of his legend. Eusebio himself later described how nervous and confused he was, a teenager leaving home for the first time, unsure what lay ahead, but carrying with him the dream of lifting his family out of poverty. When he arrived in Lisbon, he was raw, shy, and still adjusting to a new country and culture. But his impact on the pitch was immediate. In his first major match for Benfica, a friendly against Santos of Brazil, featuring the great Pelé, Eusebio came on as a substitute and stunned everyone. Against the reigning kings of world football, he scored a blistering hat trick, outpacing defenders and firing in goals with a ferocity that left even Pelé impressed. Overnight, the newspapers were calling him a phenomenon. The fans, who had not yet even learned his name, began chanting for him. He was no longer just a boy from Mozambique. He was Benfica's new jewel. With Benfica, Eusebio became the face of a golden era. Between 1961 and 1975, he scored 473 goals in 440 official games for the club, an astonishing record that still stands among the highest in football history. His style was unforgettable. Blistering acceleration, an unstoppable right foot, and the ability to shoot from almost any distance. Defenders feared him because he combined raw athletic power with refined technique. He could dribble past opponents, launch long-range rockets, or finish with delicate precision. He was a complete forward, and he made Benfica a European powerhouse. The peak of his club career came early in 1962, when Benfica faced Real Madrid in the European Cup final. Real Madrid at the time were the undisputed kings of Europe, with players like Alfredo Di Stefano and Ferenc Puskás, legends of the game. The final was expected to be another Madrid coronation. But Eusebio had other ideas. At only 20 years old, he led Benfica to a 5-3 victory, scoring 2 goals and tearing apart Madrid's defense with his speed and power. That performance confirmed him as one of the best in the world and signaled that a new era in European football had begun. But Eusebio was not content with just one night of glory. Year after year, he carried Benfica to domestic titles, winning 11 league championships and 5 cups. He was Europe's top scorer 7 times, a record of consistency that spoke to his relentless hunger. In 1965, he was awarded the Ballon d'Or as the best player in Europe, cementing his status at the very top of the game. Famous moments came not with Benfica, but with the Portuguese national team. Portugal had never been a footballing powerhouse before Eusebio. They were rarely seen on the world stage, overshadowed by their Iberian neighbor, Spain. But in 1966, during the World Cup in England, Eusebio changed everything. That tournament remains one of the defining stages of his career and of Portuguese football history. In the group stages, Eusebio led Portugal to victories over Hungary, Bulgaria, and most dramatically, the reigning champions, Brazil. Facing Pelé's Brazil was no small task, but Portugal dismantled them 3-1, with Eusebio scoring and showing the world that his country could stand with the giants. By then, the footballing world was buzzing about the man nicknamed the Black Panther, a name that captured his speed, elegance, and predatory instinct. Portugal were stunned to find themselves trailing 3-0 within the first half hour. The dream seemed over, but Eusebio refused to let it die. With unstoppable determination, he single-handedly turned the match around. He scored 4 goals in one of the most famous individual performances in World Cup history, dragging Portugal to a 5-3 victory. His roar of celebration, his arm raised high after each goal, became one of the, quote, iconic images of that World Cup. Fictional reached the semi-finals, where they faced hosts England at Wembley. Eusebio scored a late penalty, but Portugal lost 2-1. As the final whistle blew, Eusebio walked off the pitch in tears, devastated by the defeat. Those tears showed the world his passion and his humanity. He was not just a goal machine. He was a man who carried the hopes of his nation on his shoulders and felt the weight of every victory and loss. Despite the disappointment, he finished the tournament as top scorer with 9 goals, winning the Golden Boot, and he was named the best player of the tournament. For Portugal, it was their greatest ever World Cup performance, and Eusebio was hailed as the man who put them on the map. Off the pitch, Eusebio's life was quieter but deeply human. He married his beloved Flora in 1965, and together they raised 2 daughters. Despite his fame and wealth, he remained a family man, never forgetting his roots. He often sent money back to Mozambique to help relatives and spoke proudly of where he came from. Those who knew him described him as humble, friendly, and generous, always ready to sign autographs, always respectful toward fans. Even when injuries began to plague him later in his career, he never lost his love for the game. In the 1970s, constant knee problems began to slow him down. Medical treatments at the time were far less advanced than today, and the relentless tackles he endured had taken their toll. He left Benfica in 1975, but continued to play abroad, turning out for clubs in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Though no longer at his peak, he still attracted crowds wherever he went, his name enough to fill stadiums. Fans in North America who had only heard tales of him finally saw the Black Panther with their own eyes. And though he was older, his flashes of brilliance still brought gasps from the stands. After finally retiring, Eusebio remained a beloved figure in Portugal and especially at Benfica. He became an ambassador for the club, traveling with them, mentoring young players, and appearing at countless events. To see Eusebio at the Estadio da Luz was to see a living monument, a reminder of glory days and an inspiration for future generations. Cristiano Ronaldo himself has spoken about how Eusebio encouraged and guided him, passing on the mantle of Portuguese greatness. His cultural impact was profound. For Portugal, he was more than a footballer. He was a symbol of national pride, especially during difficult times when the country was under dictatorship and colonial wars were raging. For Mozambique and Africa, he was proof that someone from the continent could rise to the very top of European football, breaking barriers of race and prejudice. He showed the world that talent had no boundaries, that greatness could emerge from even the humblest origins. In his later years, Eusebio faced health struggles, undergoing heart surgeries and dealing with complications from old injuries. Yet he remained active in the footballing community until the end. On January 5, 2014, he passed away in Lisbon at the age of 71. The nation went into mourning. Thousands of fans poured into the streets to pay their respects. His coffin was driven around Benfica's stadium, draped in the club's colors, as the crowd wept and sang his name. He was buried with honors usually reserved for heads of state, a reflection of his place in Portuguese hearts. Today, a statue of Eusebio stands proudly outside Benfica's Estadio da Luz, depicting him in full stride, ready to strike the ball as he had done so many times. Tourists, fans, and players alike stop to admire it, to take photos, and to remember the man who gave them so much joy. His story is taught to young players as an example of resilience, humility, and greatness. Eusebio's numbers are staggering. More than 700 goals in official matches, a Ballon d'Or, a World Cup Golden Boot, and countless domestic and international honors. But numbers alone do not capture his essence. What made Eusebio unforgettable was the way he played, with joy, with courage, with fire in his eyes. He was a predator in front of the goal, yet always gracious in victory and dignified in defeat. He combined the raw strength of Africa with the tactical intelligence of Europe, embodying a unique blend that changed the game forever. Forehead. For those who saw him play, the memory of his runs, his strikes, and his celebrations remains etched in their minds. For those who never did, his legend lives on through stories, films, and the awe with which older generations speak his name. Eusebio was not just a Black Panther. He was football's poetry in motion, a man who turned hardship into greatness, who carried nations on his back, and whose roar still echoes across time.